she whispered into her phone. "Sometimes I wish someone would just see me, without looking down." He froze, mid-mop, because that voice, raw, tired, real, just shattered the billionaire's disguise. And in that moment, hidden beneath a janitor's uniform, Grant Whitmore wasn't a CEO. He was a man unraveling. But if she ever found out who he really was, would she hate him? Rain streaked down the high-rise windows like the sky was trying to scrub Manhattan clean. From the 42nd floor, the city looked smaller, colder. Grant Whitmore adjusted the janitor's cap down low, pressing it tighter to his forehead as he moved the mop across the marble tile. The weight of the handle in his hands was foreign, and yet grounding. The uniform didn't fit quite right, and the cheap soles of the work boots made his arches ache. But none of that mattered. No one recognized him. Which was the point? This was the headquarters of Whitmore Industries. His empire. A towering machine fueled by power, efficiency, and ambition, and somewhere deep inside, rot. After everything that had happened, the betrayal, the scandal, the headlines, he no longer trusted anyone in his own company. So, he came up with an idea. A test, he told himself. A social experiment, he rationalized. But deep down, it was something else. Something more human. He didn't want to be seen as a billionaire anymore. He wanted to know what people were like when they had nothing to gain from him. No cameras, no security detail, no Armani. Just a mop, a uniform, and a name tag that read G. Winters. It was supposed to be a week-long immersion. Blend in, observe, gather insight, keep emotions out of it. That was before he noticed her. She sat behind the curved reception desk, her posture straight, but her expression tired in a way that could only be learned, not faked. She greeted everyone who walked by with the kind of warmth that couldn't be taught in customer service training. Not chipper, sincere. She looked people in the eye, even when they didn't look back. She looked at him, too. "Morning," she had said softly on his first day. Just one word. Just a glance. But unlike the others, she didn't flinch at his uniform. She didn't scan past him like he was background noise. He didn't answer. He nodded and kept walking. But the way her voice lingered in the space between them unsettled something in him. Her nameplate read, Jenna Morales. He started noticing things. The way she straightened up before every elevator opened, even when no one was watching. The way she tucked a paperback into her drawer the moment her supervisor walked by. The way her smile flickered for a second, just once, after she hung up a particularly harsh call. She was young. Mid-20s. Maybe. Her blazer had a frayed cuff. Her shoes were scuffed, but carefully polished. She moved like someone who couldn't afford to slow down. He caught himself watching too long more than once. Then, that same night, after the building had mostly emptied, he passed by the front desk again. Mop gliding across the floor. She was on the phone. Unaware of his presence, her voice was lower, softer, frayed at the edges. "Yeah, I know. I sent the payment, it just didn't clear yet. I'll try again on Friday." A pause. "I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending everything's okay. This place is beautiful. But it's like everyone's too busy being important to notice the ones holding the doors open." Another pause. Her voice dropped even lower, barely above a whisper. "Sometimes I wish someone would just see me, without looking down." The words sliced through the silence like broken glass. His hand tightened on the mop. For a split second, he couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It was like someone had cracked open his ribcage and reached inside. He had heard confessions in boardrooms, screamed demands in private jets, lies whispered in penthouse bedrooms, but this was different. This was real. She didn't even know he was there. That made it worse. Or maybe it made it matter more. The mop handle slipped from his fingers, clattering softly against the tile. She didn't turn around. Didn't hear it. She was still lost in the conversation on the other end of the line. He picked it up slowly, staring at the floor as water pooled into a thin shimmer. The emotions that stirred in him, empathy, guilt, something dangerously close to longing, were foreign and unwelcome. He told himself this was just part of the assignment, just a side observation, but he couldn't stop thinking about it on the subway home. Couldn't stop hearing the rawness in her voice as he tossed and turned in his penthouse bed with its Egyptian cotton sheets and emptiness echoing against stone walls. Sometimes I wish someone would just see me. He didn't know her story, didn't know what she'd been through, or how many days she'd faked her smile just to keep a job she probably hated. But somehow, tonight, her pain mirrored his own. He had all the money in the world, and yet not a single person who truly saw him either. And that scared him more than anything. The next morning, Grant stood in the janitor's closet, staring at the reflection in a small, cracked mirror nailed to the back of the door. His face was clean-shaven now, his jaw tense, the dark circles under his eyes more visible than usual. He adjusted the cap again, lower this time. He hadn't slept much. He kept hearing her voice in his head. Not the professional tone she used at the front desk, but the one from last night, quiet, unfiltered, and exhausted. The kind of honesty most people buried so deep, they forgot how to say it. Sometimes I wish someone would just see me. The mop bucket sloshed as he rolled it out into the hallway. Every step felt heavier today. He didn't understand why it hit him so hard. He'd heard 1,000 sob stories before, some true, most not. But hers hadn't been told for sympathy. It wasn't even meant for him to hear. That made all the difference. Jenna was already at the desk when he passed by. Her hair was pulled into a loose ponytail, a soft curl brushing the side of her cheek. Her expression was composed, calm, like always, but her eyes were puffy. She'd cried last night. He could see it. He didn't say anything, just pushed the mop along, keeping his head down like a good janitor should. She looked up and smiled. "Hey, morning." There it was again, kindness, despite everything. He nodded. That was the thing about Jenna. She wasn't performing. There was no one to impress, no one to charm. It wasn't flirtation. It was grace. Even in struggle, even after that phone call, she greeted people like they mattered. He found himself glancing at her during every hallway pass. Once, she caught him. Their eyes met for a fraction too long. Her brow furrowed, just slightly, like she was trying to remember if they'd spoken before. Then the elevator chimed, and she turned back to her screen. Later that afternoon, a man in an expensive overcoat stormed up to the desk. Grant was wiping the windows a few feet away. "Why is this meeting not on the 36th floor?" the man barked. "I've been waiting 15 minutes, and no one knows a damn thing." Jenna offered her best customer service smile. "I'm so sorry, sir. Let me check that for you. It looks like your meeting was moved to Conference 3A. Due to the flood issue, on 36. You should have received an updated invite this morning." I don't read emails from receptionists. There it was, that word, sharp as a slap. Receptionists. Like she was a potted plant in the lobby. Grant's jaw tightened. Jenna didn't flinch. "Well," she said, "the update came from your assistant, and I'm happy to walk you to the new room, if that helps." The man waved her off and stormed toward the elevator. Grant couldn't look away from her face. Not because she reacted, but because she didn't. Not on the surface, anyway. But the moment she thought no one was looking, her hands dropped to her lap and clenched into fists. Just once. Just long enough. He swallowed hard. At the end of the day, when the crowd thinned out and silence began to settle over the building, Grant took the long way back to the janitor's closet. He passed by the reception desk slowly, heart thudding like he was about to commit a crime. She was alone again, cleaning up her workspace. Her phone buzzed. She checked it. Her shoulders sank. Whatever the message was, it didn't bring good news. He hesitated. Then, before he could stop himself, he spoke. "Hard day?" She blinked and looked up, surprised. It took her a second to realize he'd spoken. "Oh," she smiled, embarrassed. "Was it that obvious?" He shook his head. "Not to most." Her smile lingered, a little softer now. "You're the quiet one. Been seeing you around all week." He shrugged, keeping his voice low. Just trying to stay out of the way. Well, you're doing a great job. The floors have never looked shinier. It was a small moment. Light. Casual. But underneath it, something shifted. Her shoulders dropped an inch, like she could breathe again. He didn't say anything else. Just nodded and walked away, hands clammy around the mop handle. The next day, he lingered by the elevators longer than usual. She arrived 5 minutes late, breathing hard, soaked from the rain. Her coat was too thin, her shoes squished, but she still said good morning like it mattered. By lunchtime, he'd memorized the way she hummed when she typed. He saw her sitting in the break room, eating the same sandwich as the day before, book in her hand, a different one now, of mice and men. He knew that story too well. He thought about sitting across from her, just to say something, anything, but he didn't. Instead, he listened from the hallway. Later that night, Jenna stayed late. It was nearly 7 when she finally packed up her things and slipped her phone into her bag. Grant was cleaning the glass door near the exit. She hesitated at the lobby, then sighed and sat back down, pulling her phone back out. She didn't see him. Didn't know he was listening. "I know I said I'd bring more meds home, but I didn't get the bonus," she whispered. "They said maybe next quarter." "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm trying." There was a pause. "I don't want to cry at work again. It's embarrassing." Another pause. I just want something to change. Anything. Even a small thing." Grant stood frozen behind the glass, rag in one hand, the other clenched at his side. He'd built skyscrapers, bought islands, crushed competitors in billion-dollar acquisitions. But standing there, listening to her break in quiet pieces, he felt helpless. Something cracked open inside him. He realized it wasn't just guilt or empathy anymore. He cared. Not from pity, not from curiosity, but something else. Something dangerous. Something he hadn't allowed himself to feel since before Tasha's betrayal. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to observe, not feel, not ache, not want to reach across that desk, wipe away the weight in her eyes, and tell her she wasn't invisible. She wasn't alone. He wasn't sure what this meant. He only knew one thing. He had to keep listening. Have you ever said something out loud you thought no one heard, but someone did? How did it change things? Drop your story in the comments. He told himself it was coincidence that the only reason he kept ending up near the front desk was because of assigned cleaning routes, not intention. But even Grant couldn't fully believe that anymore. Each day, he watched Jenna Morales through sidelong glances. Each day, he told himself to stay detached. But something in him kept reaching toward her silently, stubbornly. He tried to justify it. Curiosity, empathy, a study in human resilience. But none of those excuses explained the weight he carried home every night after watching her smile through what clearly felt like hell. The truth? He was starting to care too much. And that was dangerous, because she still didn't know who he was. And if she found out, she would hate him. That thought kept him quiet. It was easier to lie by omission than risk breaking something honest. Honesty, after all, was the one thing she'd never had the luxury to stop giving. On Thursday morning, Jenna was already seated when Grant entered the building. She was sipping a coffee from a worn stainless steel thermos, typing something quickly into her computer. Her eyebrows were drawn tight together. Her jaw was clenched. Even from 20 feet away, he could tell she was in her head. Then her phone rang. She picked it up. "Yes, this is Jenna." "No, I wasn't informed of that." "Right. But I don't have access to that system." "Yes. I understand." "Okay. I'll figure it out." "I'm 72. She hung up and sat still for a moment. Her shoulders sagged. Then she reached into her drawer, pulled out a bottle of ibuprofen, and swallowed 2 pills with a sip of cold coffee. Grant turned his back to the scene and forced himself to mop slower. It was getting harder to pretend. That afternoon, while she was at lunch, he found himself walking near her desk again. He paused at her station, eyes drawn to a post-it stuck to the corner of her screen. It read, "Just get through today. One more step forward. That's all. He stared at the words like they were an echo from some far part of himself. He knew what it felt like to survive, one day at a time. The empire he'd built had cost him more than money. It had cost him trust, peace, simplicity, all the things she still seemed to believe in, even while they were slipping through her fingers. He returned to the janitor's closet and sat on the bench inside, hands pressed together, elbows on knees. He couldn't keep doing this. He wasn't some savior, and she wasn't some charity case. This wasn't a game. She was a real person with real struggles, and every moment he let her believe he was someone else, it became a little more cruel. Still, the words she spoke that first night haunted him. Sometimes, I wish someone would just see me, without looking down. The irony wasn't lost on him. She thought he was poor, powerless, invisible, and she'd treated him better than anyone ever had. If she knew he was Grant Whitmore, would she have looked him in the eye at all? He didn't know the answer. He only knew that when he looked at her, he didn't feel like a billionaire. He felt like a man. That evening, he avoided her desk entirely. He cleaned the conference rooms on floor 37, stayed late, organizing the supply closet, scrubbed already clean glass just to keep his hands busy. He didn't want to hear her voice again, didn't want to feel that pull. He thought avoiding her might help him forget. It didn't. When he finally came down to the lobby, it was nearly 8. Most of the building had emptied. She was still there. He saw her standing by the front doors, looking out at the rain that had started again. Her phone was pressed to her ear. "No, Mom. Don't wait up." "Yes. I'll grab something on the way home." "No. I didn't get the shift covered. I'll just pick up some soup and take the late train." "I'm fine. Really." Her voice cracked just slightly at that last word. Fine. It was such a lie. But she said it with such practiced conviction that Grant felt himself flinch. He wanted to walk up to her, say something, offer her a ride home, offer her more than that. But his throat locked. Because if she asked who he really was, what would he say? He didn't trust himself not to answer. The next morning, Jenna arrived late again. Soaked, hair clinging to her cheeks, eyeliner smudged just slightly beneath one eye. She didn't smile when she sat down. She just booted up her computer and got to work. When he passed her desk around 10, she didn't speak. That silence unsettled him more than anything she could have said. A few minutes later, he circled back and placed a fresh coffee cup on the edge of her desk. The lid was clean. The sleeve said her name. She blinked at it, looked up. He shrugged. "Figured you could use a break." She studied him, cautious. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to." Her gaze lingered on his face a little longer this time. Then, softly, she said, "Thank you." She took a sip, and for the first time that day, she smiled. It was small, but it was real. He walked away quickly, heart pounding. The next time he passed, she was humming again. But Grant knew he couldn't keep going like this. One way or another, something had to change. Soon, that Friday started like any other. The cold bit harder. The clouds hung lower. Jenna stepped into the lobby 15 minutes late with a styrofoam cup of instant oatmeal and a half-zipped coat, damp from freezing drizzle. She looked like she hadn't slept. Again, Grant was already there, quietly mopping near the entrance, pretending not to notice how she shuffled past him without a word. Her eyes were distant, shoulders heavy. He told himself to give her space. Maybe she needed silence more than sympathy. By early afternoon, the snow had started slow at first, then a steady, aggressive fall that painted the streets white in under an hour. Employees in tailored suits started murmuring about canceled meetings and closed train lines. By 3 p.m., phones buzzed across every floor. Weather advisories, road closures, transit suspensions. The building, usually teeming with ambition until dusk, began to empty like a sinking ship. Jenna was still at her desk when the last elevator chimed, and the final group of executives rushed out into the storm. She picked up her phone, dialed, waited. "Yeah, it's Jenna. The subways are down." "Yeah, all of them." "I know. I was going to stop by the pharmacy, but..." She paused, then lowered her voice. "Can you wait until tomorrow for the insulin, please?" She ended the call and let her forehead drop into her palm. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly above her. Grant stood on the other side of the lobby, drying his hands on a cloth. He had no business staying, no reason to approach her. But when he looked out the window at the growing snow and saw how empty the city had become, he knew one thing for sure: neither of them was going anywhere tonight. He walked slowly over to her desk. "You good?" She looked up, caught off guard by the concern in his voice. "Not really," she admitted. "Transit's shut down. I can't afford a hotel, and my apartment's an hour away. In snow, maybe 2. You can't get an Uber?" She gave a short, tired laugh. "Even if I could afford surge pricing, no one's driving tonight." He hesitated, then glanced toward the side hallway. "There's a break room upstairs. It's warmer. And there's a couch." Jenna raised an eyebrow. "Is that where the janitors hide from the chaos?" "Exactly." His voice was lighter than usual, teasing. "We've got the real secrets." She looked down at her desk, then toward the storm, then back at him. "You sure?" He nodded. "Come on. You can't sleep under that desk. It's bad for your spine." She grabbed her bag and followed him down the hall. The break room on the 12th floor was small and outdated, but clean. A beige couch sagged in the middle, and a vending machine blinked in the corner like a lonely robot. Someone had left a radio on low, soft jazz played faintly from the speaker. Jenna dropped her bag with a sigh and rubbed her arms. "Okay, you weren't lying. This is a serious upgrade from the lobby." Grant handed her one of the spare blankets from the storage bin near the lockers. She unfolded it carefully, then sat on the couch, tucking it around her legs. "Thanks." He settled into the worn recliner across from her. They sat in silence for a while, the storm whispering against the windows, the faint hum of city lights outside reminding them they were high above the chaos. "I've never seen it so quiet in here," she murmured. He nodded. "The city only sleeps during blizzards or blackouts." She looked over at him. "You always this calm during emergencies." "Only when I know I'm not the only one stuck." Jenna smiled faintly. "Well, I guess if I had to be snowed in with someone, I could have done worse." He leaned back, letting that warmth settle. They talked for a while. About nothing at first: her favorite vending machine snack, pretzels. The worst customer she ever had: a guy who asked her to order his lunch and cancel his gym membership. The time she accidentally transferred a call to the CEO's personal line. He cursed at her, and then apologized a week later. "I always thought," she said softly, "that people up there," she pointed toward the higher floors, "had it all figured out: money, power, certainty. But the longer I work here, the more I think they're just louder about their panic." Grant laughed, a short exhale. "You're not wrong. You ever wonder," she asked after a pause, "what people would do if no one knew who they were? If titles disappeared?" He looked at her, heartbeat suddenly louder in his ears. "Yeah, all the time." There was a moment of quiet between them. Then Jenna pulled her legs up under the blanket and rested her chin on her knees. "I used to want more than this. Something bigger. Then life just got hard. Dreams turned into bills. Bills turned into survival. With had." He watched her closely. The dim lighting softened her face, but there was a crack in her voice now. A kind of vulnerability that only came in rare, accidental moments. "But you still smile," he said gently, "even when no one's watching." She looked at him like she was trying to figure him out. "Why do you notice that?" she asked quietly. He hesitated. "Because I see you." Her breath caught for a second. Not enough to call attention to, but enough for him to see the truth. She wasn't used to being seen. Outside, the wind howled louder, the windows rattled. They were completely alone now, suspended between floors, time, and realities. Jenna broke the silence. "I don't even know your name." He froze. A lie hovered on his tongue. He told the other staff his alias Graham Winters, but something in her eyes made it harder to use now. "Graham," he said finally. "Graham Winters." She nodded slowly. "Nice to meet you, Graham." He forced a smile, then stood and walked to the vending machine. "I'm buying us dinner, big spender." He returned with 2 bags of pretzels and a Sprite. She laughed, an actual laugh, and accepted the snack. They ate in silence for a while. The couch creaked. Her eyelids drooped. "You should rest," he said. "So, should you?" She curled up with the blanket, head resting against the arm of the couch. Her breathing slowed. He watched her for a moment, then looked away, closed his eyes, tried not to feel too much. But in the quiet of that break room, with a snowstorm wrapping the world in stillness, Grant Whitmore realized something terrifying and beautiful at once. He was falling for her, and she didn't even know his real name. By morning, the snow had blanketed the streets like a quiet apology. New York City had gone from chaos to silence overnight. Outside the break room window, the world was gray and white and slow, the kind of rare hush that made time feel like it had stopped. Jenna was still curled up on the couch, blanket tucked around her knees, her face softened by sleep. Grant sat in the recliner again, but this time his eyes were on her, not the window. She looked peaceful, younger, as if, in sleep, the world finally gave her permission to stop bracing. He hadn't slept, his body was tired, but his mind kept looping the same questions. What was he doing? Why couldn't he pull away? And how much longer could he let this go on before it all fell apart? The truth was coiling tighter around him, threatening to snap. She stirred just after 7. Her eyes blinked open slowly, then squinted at the light. "Morning," she murmured, rubbing her face. "Still snowing?" He nodded. "Less now. Roads should open later." She sat up and stretched, groaning softly. "I slept like a rock. You needed it." "Guess so. Thanks for not letting me freeze to death in the lobby. I figured if anyone deserved a break, it was you." She gave him a lopsided smile and ran her hands through her hair. "What about you? You sleep?" He hesitated. "Not really." She studied him then, like she was seeing something she hadn't noticed before. "You look like someone who carries a lot but doesn't talk about it." He didn't reply right away. Instead, he looked at the window. "You ever trust the wrong person?" Her expression didn't change, but her voice did. "Yeah," she said softly, "too many times." He exhaled slowly. "I was engaged. A few years ago, she said all the right things. Made me feel seen. But she was just playing a game. There was someone else." Jenna's posture shifted, just slightly. "I'm sorry." He shrugged, trying to play it off. "You know what hurt the most? It wasn't the cheating. It was realizing she never really loved me. She loved the name, the status. I could have been anyone, so long as I came with a corner office and a last name people whispered." Jenna was quiet for a long moment. "I think," she said gently, "that's why people like us stay quiet. Because once someone knows your soft spots, they know where to cut." That struck him harder than he expected. "Yeah," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "Exactly." They didn't say much more after that. The connection between them didn't need filling. It just existed quiet and steady like a thread slowly tying them together. Later that morning, the building slowly came back to life. A few staff returned. The storm had passed. Roads were clearing. The city, as it always did, was waking back up. Jenna freshened up in the bathroom and returned to her desk with the blanket still folded under her arm. Grant resumed his post, cleaning the elevator panel with slow, methodical wipes. She smiled at him when he passed by, and this time it wasn't forced. That afternoon, something strange happened. Jenna was cleaning out the waiting area near the front desk when she noticed a magazine someone had left on one of the chairs. She picked it up absent-mindedly. It was an issue of Forbes, slightly crumpled at the edges. The cover caught her eye. Inside the mind of Grant Whitmore. Billionaire, builder, betrayed. The headline was bold, dramatic, the kind of phrasing meant to stir curiosity. A portrait, sharp, clean, classic, and familiar. She stared at the face for a long moment. It wasn't exact. The man in the photo had more polish. The suit, the lighting, the money. But the eyes, the resemblance was uncanny. Her gaze flicked up, scanning the lobby. There, across the floor, Graham was wiping down the railing near the elevator. Hat low, shoulders tense. She looked back at the photo, then at him. She tilted the magazine slowly, trying to match the angles in her mind. Her heart started to pound. No, it couldn't be. Why would a billionaire pretend to be a janitor? She flipped the magazine open, scanning the article. Words like reclusive, recently betrayed, unreachable for comment jumped out at her. She closed it, put it down, watched him again. Everything about him, the posture, the quiet observation, the way he'd listened to her without rushing to fix or judge it, suddenly felt less random and more intentional. She didn't say anything. Not yet. But that night, after the building emptied and she returned to the break room for her coat, she found a small note tucked into her locker. Just a square of paper, folded once. Inside, a message in messy handwriting. You're not invisible, just incredibly easy to admire from a distance. No name, no explanation. Her hands trembled slightly as she read it again. She closed her locker and stared out the break room window at the city below. Something wasn't adding up, and yet, something about it made her feel like, for the first time in a long time, she wasn't just background noise in someone else's day. Someone was paying attention, really paying attention. The question was, who? By Monday, the snow had mostly melted, replaced by puddles and mud tracked through the lobby by returning employees. The world had resumed its pace. Deadlines, noise, clacking heels. It was like the storm had never happened. But something had shifted, something between them. Jenna felt it first in the way Graham, if that was even his name, glanced at her less cautiously and more deliberately. As if he wasn't hiding anymore. Or maybe he was just tired of pretending. She couldn't be sure. She hadn't asked him about the magazine yet. The resemblance still lingered in her mind, too strange to be ignored, too unreal to confront. And then there was the note. That damn note. It hadn't left her purse since she found it. She read it twice a day. You're not invisible, just incredibly easy to admire from a distance. No one had ever called her easy to admire. Certainly not while scrubbing the same desk phones and handling entitled clients who barked orders like she was furniture. But Graham, he didn't bark. He noticed. She found herself waiting for him now, watching out of the corner of her eye when he passed, smiling when he lingered just a little longer. On Tuesday, around 4 p.m., Jenna's computer froze mid-email. She smacked the side lightly. Frustrated, Graham was cleaning the glass door nearby. Computer fighting back? He asked, not looking up. It hates me, she said with a sigh. Pretty sure it's trying to sabotage my job. Have you tried threatening it? I've tried crying. That didn't help either. He chuckled. The sound was warm. Jenna glanced up and found him smiling. You always this charming with broken things? He teased. Only the ones that are too stubborn to fix. He tilted his head. She paused. Then nodded. Yeah. Especially them. The words settled between them, soft but heavy. Later that week, she found him on the rooftop terrace during her break alone, sweeping snow into the corners where the drain system couldn't reach. It was cold, but the sky was unusually clear. The city below shimmered like 1,000 forgotten dreams. She pulled her coat tighter and walked out slowly. Didn't think janitors got rooftop access, she said. Perks of being invisible, he replied with a wink. She leaned on the railing beside him. I come up here sometimes when I need to breathe. You know. Remember, there's more to life than voicemail messages and frozen emails. I get that. They stood together in silence, the wind brushing their faces, not saying much for a long while. Then she said, Can I ask you something? He nodded, cautious. Why do you talk to me? He blinked. What do you mean? I mean, no one else here really sees me. Not really. They ask me to do things. Smile at me. Out of habit. But you actually talk. You ask things. You notice. Why? He didn't answer right away. Then, Because I know what it feels like not to be seen. She turned toward him, studying his face again. Searching. Wanting to ask what she already suspected. But something stopped her. Instead, she said, "You're different." He looked down. "I hope that's a good thing." "It is," she said. "It really is." The next day, the vending machine jammed again, and she cursed softly under her breath, smacking the side. Graham appeared behind her like clockwork. "Stuck again? Third time this week. What's the ransom?" "Chocolate almonds." He pulled a quarter from his pocket and tried a trick, rocking the base while pressing a 4 twice and then B7. The machine groaned. Then the packet dropped. Jenna gasped. "How did you?" "Trade secret," he said, handing it to her like it was treasure. She laughed, mouth open, eyes wide. He'd never seen her laugh like that. It was beautiful. "Okay, now you have to teach me. You want to learn how to hack a vending machine? I want to survive this place. Pretty sure that's step 1. So he taught her. Right there in the hallway, in whispered tones like it was a heist movie. They tested it again with a bag of pretzels. It worked. She high-fived him. The moment lingered longer than it should have. After work, they rode the elevator down together alone. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was charged. Safe. Somehow. When the doors opened, she didn't move for a second. Neither did he. "You ever think," she said quietly, "that the most honest moments in your life come from the most unexpected people?" He looked at her like she was speaking a language only the two of them understood. Every day, that night, Jenna walked home instead of taking the train. The air was cold, but her face was warm. She didn't know where this was going, but she knew how it made her feel. Seen, safe, wanted, maybe. She hadn't felt that in years. And it terrified her just as much as it thrilled her. At home, after helping her mother with dinner, she pulled the note from her purse again and stared at it under the kitchen light. "You're not invisible." She ran her fingers over the ink, soft and careful, like it might disappear if she blinked. Her mother noticed. "Who's he?" Jenna looked up. "Who?" Her mom pointed to the paper. "That smile you're trying to hide? That's a man's smile." "So, who is he?" Jenna laughed, flushed. Her mother smiled knowingly. "All the best ones are." Meanwhile, in a corner suite, atop the building, Jenna cleaned every day. Grant Whitmore sat alone in the darkness, the city lights outside flickering against the glass. His laptop sat open. An email draft glowed on the screen. To. From. Grant Whitmore. Subject. The truth. He stared at it. Typed a few lines. Deleted them. Typed again. Paused. He couldn't send it. Not yet. He wasn't ready to risk what they were building. He was falling, and so was she. But the truth was coming for them both. And it wasn't going to knock. By Thursday morning, the tension in the building felt electric. Something unsaid had been weaving between them all week, growing tighter with every shared smile, every brush of hands, every look that lasted a moment too long. Grant knew the rope he was walking was fraying beneath his feet. Each interaction with Jenna made him feel more alive than he'd felt in years. But every beat of that connection came with the quiet scream of a clock ticking down. He needed to tell her the truth, but he kept waiting, waiting for a better moment, waiting for a way to explain that wouldn't make him look like a liar, a manipulator, or worse, another man who pretended to care just to feel good about himself. That moment never came. It exploded instead. It started just before lunch. Jenna had gone to the conference wing to drop off a file someone had mistakenly handed her, and Grant, still wearing his cleaner's uniform, was mopping the tile near the elevators when the sharp ding of doors opening pulled his attention. From inside the elevator, a tall man in an expensive gray suit stepped out, flanked by two others. His voice boomed with certainty, and his stride screamed power. "I'll take the meeting from the corner room. Grant always prefers that one. You know how he is about lighting." Grant froze mid-mop. Jenna, standing just feet away, turned at the name. "Grant?" she said quietly. The suited man, clearly not expecting to be overheard, looked toward her, and then toward Grant. A split second of recognition flashed in his eyes, and then something worse. "Oh, there you are," the man said, half laughing. "You're late, boss." Silence. Everyone turned to look at the man in the janitor's uniform, the man who had mopped floors, fixed vending machines, and handed her coffee with gentle eyes. Jenna stared at him, blinking slowly, as if trying to reconcile the face with everything she had known and everything she hadn't. Grant's throat was dry. He didn't speak, didn't move, didn't know how. "Wait," Jenna said, her voice tight. "You're Grant? As in Grant Whitmore?" The man in the suit looked at her like it was obvious. "Yeah, who did you think he was?" Grant opened his mouth to explain, to say something, anything, but the words didn't come fast enough. Jenna took a step back, expression clouding. "You lied to me. I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean to lie?" Her voice was shaking now. "You've been watching me for weeks, pretending to be someone else. And you didn't mean to?" "I wasn't watching you," he said quickly. "I was studying me?" She cut in, eyes narrowing. "What was I? A project? A curiosity? A field report? On how the poor live?" "No," he said, desperately. "You were. You are God." "Jenna, it wasn't like that." But it didn't matter. The damage was already bleeding. She backed away again, arms crossed tight like a shield across her chest. "You don't get to say my name like that. I was just trying to understand the people in my company. I needed to see who was real. And you picked me?" Her voice cracked on the word. "You let me open up to you. You let me cry in front of you. You listened, and the whole time you were wearing a mask." "I didn't plan to meet you," he said, voice thick with regret. "But once I did, I couldn't walk away." She stared at him like he was a stranger, like he wasn't the same man who had fixed her vending machine and made her laugh in the break room. "You let me believe we were equals," she whispered. "But you were only here because you own the floor I walk on." Grant reached out instinctively, but she stepped back again. "You had every opportunity to tell me the truth," she said. "But you chose to lie. Every single day." She turned then, shaking, and walked toward the exit. "Jenna," he called after her. She didn't stop. She didn't even look back. He stood there, surrounded by polished tile and glass, watching her leave. For the first time in years, he felt small inside his own empire. The man in the suit tried to joke. "Well, that was awkward." Grant didn't reply. He just walked away. Later that night, Jenna sat alone on the subway, staring at her reflection in the window as the city streaked past in fractured light. Her chest ached, but not just from the betrayal. It was from the loss of something real. She didn't cry. Not this time. She just stared blankly, playing every moment back like a slow-motion movie. The rooftop conversation, the note, the vending machine tricks, the snowstorm, all of it, what had felt so honest, now tainted by a lie. And the worst part? She had started to trust him. Maybe more than trust. Back at his penthouse, Grant sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his phone. He didn't know what to say. He typed messages and erased them, opened emails, closed them again. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't think of anything except the look on her face when she realized who he was. Not a janitor, not an equal, just another man with a secret and too much power. He thought being seen as ordinary would bring him peace. But the moment he saw her walking away, he realized something unbearable. Being seen for who he truly was had only mattered when it was her doing the seeing. And now, she was gone. The next 3 days passed like fog through glass. Jenna went to work, mechanically. She answered phones, smiled at visitors, logged deliveries, but she wasn't really there. Her laughter was gone. Her eyes never lifted above her computer. The light in her had dimmed. She told no one what happened. No one asked. It was easier that way. What would she even say? That the billionaire who owned the building she worked in, who mopped the floors in disguise, had been the only person to truly see her? That she'd let herself believe someone like that could care? She was angry, yes, but mostly she was ashamed. Ashamed that she had let him in, that she had believed him, that she had given away something vulnerable and true only to realize it wasn't shared. it was studied. She felt like an exhibit in his guilt museum, like a kind-hearted fool in a fairy tale that was never meant to end well. And worst of all, a part of her still missed him, still checked the hallway every time she heard a mop bucket roll by, knowing full well he wouldn't be there. Not anymore. Grant hadn't returned to the building. Not as Graham, not as himself. It was like he'd vanished just as silently as he had appeared, but he hadn't disappeared. He was watching from the top floors. Security cameras, internal reports, guest logs. He wasn't proud of it, but he had to see her. Even from a distance, he couldn't stop thinking about her voice, about her strength, about the way she had made him feel like a person instead of a paycheck. Every day that passed without reaching out added another brick to the wall between them. But he wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. He sat at the desk in his private office, staring at the skyline through double-paned glass, and knew what he had to do. It wouldn't fix everything, but it would be honest. And for the first time in a long time, that would have to be enough. He showed up at her apartment building the next evening. No driver, no security, no suit, just Grant, standing in the dim light of the stairwell, holding a white envelope in his hand. He didn't buzz the intercom. He waited until someone else came in with groceries and followed them through the door, heart pounding. When he reached her floor, he hesitated in front of her door. Then he knocked. A long silence. Then footsteps. Then the door cracked open, chain still attached. Her eyes widened when she saw him. She said nothing. He held up the envelope. "I wrote you something. It's not an excuse. It's just everything I should have said before." Number. She didn't take it. He didn't push. "I know I don't deserve to be here. And I won't stay long. But I meant every word I ever said to you. The vending machines, the coffee, the jokes, the break room." Still, no response. He nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll leave it." He placed the envelope on the floor, stepped back. She closed the door without a word. On the other side, her back slid down the wood as she sank to the floor, the envelope inches from her bare feet. She stared at it for a long time. Did she want to open it? Did she dare? An hour passed before she finally picked it up, hands trembling slightly as she peeled the seal. Inside was a letter, handwritten. 2 pages. She read it once, then again. "Jenna, I never meant to lie to you. That sounds hollow, I know. But I wasn't looking for you when I walked into that lobby. I wasn't looking for anyone. I was hiding from the world, from my own name, from the pain of being used too many times to count. Then you looked at me like I mattered, and I remembered what it felt like to be seen without being measured. You didn't talk to me because of my title. You talked to me because of who I was. I never realized how starved I was for that until you gave it to me. I should have told you sooner. I was afraid. Afraid that the moment I told you the truth, I'd lose the only real thing I've had in years. But I lost it anyway, didn't I? Because I lied by staying silent. If you never want to see me again, I understand. But I need you to know what happened between us was never fake. I wasn't pretending to care. I was pretending not to fall in love. Grant." She folded the letter slowly, her chest rising and falling in uneven breaths. Tears slid down her cheeks, not because the letter was perfect, but because it wasn't. It was messy. It was human. And it sounded like him. The real him. She didn't sleep that night. She just lay in bed, the letter folded under her pillow, her thoughts racing. By morning, her decision still wasn't clear. But she knew one thing. She didn't want to be someone who ran from truth. And love, when it was real, deserved more than silence. That night, after the office emptied and the cleaning crew returned to their routine, Jenna stayed behind. She took the elevator to the top floor somewhere she'd never been. The doors opened to a quiet hallway, polished floors, and modern lighting. She walked slowly until she reached the door marked G. Whitmore, Executive Office. She knocked once. The door opened, and there he was. No disguise. No distance. Just him. He looked stunned, like he hadn't dared to hope. She held up the letter in her hand. "I'm not here to yell," she said. "But I'm not here to forget either." He swallowed hard. "I wouldn't expect you to." She stepped inside. I don't know what this is, she said. But I know what it felt like. He nodded. So let's talk, she said. And they did. For hours. No lies. No walls. Just two people trying to rebuild something they hadn't even meant to start. But maybe, just maybe, we're ready to finish together. The lights of Manhattan shimmered against the glass wall behind him, but Grant barely noticed the skyline anymore. He sat across from Jenna in the same office where he had made billion-dollar decisions, signed international deals, and fired executives without blinking. But nothing had ever made him more nervous than sitting across from her now. No title, no armor, no excuses. Just him and her. She leaned forward slightly, fingers resting on the letter she had brought with her. I read it 3 times, she said softly. I wasn't trying to win you back, he said. I just didn't want to lose you without telling the truth. You did both, she replied. But her voice wasn't sharp. It was tired. Real. He lowered his eyes. I know. There was a long silence between them. But it wasn't cold. It was the kind of quiet that came when two people were trying to decide if healing was worth the risk. She looked around his office. It was sleek, immaculate, empty of personal touches. A space designed to intimidate, not invite. You live in a world I don't understand, she said, and I've spent my whole life surviving in one you probably can't imagine. You're wrong, he said gently. I grew up on a second-hand mattress in Queens. My mom cleaned apartments at night. I know what it's like to hide a shut-off notice under your bed. Jenna blinked, surprised. She died before I could ever give her the life she deserved, he added. So I built this company. I made it bulletproof. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what it was like to just be seen. And then, I met you. She breathed in slowly, her chest rising. He stood up, walked over to the far wall, and pressed a button on the panel. A digital plaque behind him illuminated. She stood too, walking closer. On the wall, in clean, engraved lettering, were her words. See people, without looking down. J. Morales. Her hand flew to her mouth. I changed the company motto last week, he said. I wanted every executive, every intern, every suit who walks through these halls to remember what it means to lead with respect. To actually see people. She turned to him, eyes glistening. You used my words? I built skyscrapers, he said. But that sentence, it changed everything. She stared at the wall again, shaking her head in disbelief. I didn't do anything special, she whispered. You did, he replied. You looked at a stranger and treated him with dignity. You taught me more in 3 weeks than I learned in 10 years of board meetings. Her breath caught. I didn't think you were listening. I was listening to you long before I realized I needed to be. Another silence. Then she asked the question that had haunted her since the moment everything fell apart. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He looked away. Because the moment I saw your face, the morning after the storm, I knew I'd already fallen. And I was terrified that the moment I told you the truth, you'd disappear. She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. You were right. That hurt more than he expected. He nodded slowly. But, she continued, you also stayed. And you owned it. And you gave me space to choose. He turned to her now. And what do you choose? Jenna took another step forward, until there was almost no space between them. I don't know what this will look like, she said. I'm not interested in fairy tales. But I am interested in real. Grant let out a shaky breath, emotion tugging at the edge of his voice. Then I'm here, as myself. No more games. Her fingers brushed his. He took her hand, tentative, waiting for her to pull away. She didn't. I don't want to be your employee, she said. You won't be, he replied. That job was beneath you anyway. She laughed, rolling her eyes. Wow, smooth. He smiled for the first time in days. What do you want, Jenna? She hesitated for a moment, then looked him in the eyes. I want to be with someone who sees me, and lets me see them. No masks, no titles. He stepped closer, eyes locked on hers. Then take a walk with me. She raised an eyebrow. A walk? Just outside, he said. No penthouses, no chauffeurs. Just Streetlights and cold air, she considered, then nodded. Okay. They stepped out of the towering glass building side by side, into the crisp night, where their breath clouded in front of them and car horns faded into the distance. They walked silently for a while, down Madison Avenue, past glittering windows and empty coffee shops. No cameras, no false pretenses. Jenna stopped at the corner of the block and looked up at him. Do you still want to be seen? She asked. He answered, without hesitation. Only if it's by you. She smiled, the kind of smile that made him forget the years of cold boardrooms and hollow victories. Good, she said, because I've been looking at you for a while now. They stood under a flickering streetlight, inches apart, the sounds of the city moving around them like background noise to something much more important. He leaned in slowly. So did she. When their lips met, it wasn't dramatic or fireworks. It was warm. It was steady. It was home. Back inside, the lobby was quiet. The cleaning crew had started their rounds. The world would keep spinning. But for Grant and Jenna, time had paused just long enough for two broken people to decide that maybe, just maybe, love didn't need to be planned. It only needed to be real. And this was real. Do you believe love can come from the most unexpected places? Drop your story or thoughts in the comments. Your truth might just be what someone else needs to hear. If this story touched you, like the video and subscribe for more powerful stories just like this.